Hey, thanks for coming back to our channel. This is Dan with Green Machine Outdoors. Do you want to find out how to catch a lot of bait really fast? I bet you do. But first, check this out. We are in a creek channel coming off a main channel in the James River. So we just came back here in this creek looking for some flats, looking for some gizzard shad and things like that. So we are using a gill net today. You probably saw that in the title of the video. First thing to keep in mind with that is check your local laws. In Virginia, we're allowed to use a gill net as long as we purchase a license/permit for it. So I've done that. I can use up to a 100-foot net. I do that in the boat, but in the kayak, I just use a 50-foot net. So we're gonna go ahead, show you how to toss that in the water, how to retrieve it, how to keep things nice and organized so you're not all tangled up, and how to catch a lot of bait. Check it out. Yeah, so one of the most important things when it comes to setting a gill net is just having your net prepped and ready to go inside of whatever container you have it in. I've got my sinking line over here, my floating line over here. So I like to prep my net, keeping those on separate sides of my box. And as I pull them in, I will just keep them on those sides and keep it organized that way. That way when I go to set it the next time, all I have to do is drop the sinking line over here and the floating line over here and drive away from it, or let the current pull me away from it. So that helps a ton. Okay, so right now I'm cruising around looking for a spot to set my net. I will be watching some side scan and things like that, looking for fish to appear. You can see a couple of them right up in here. Those little white dots, so that's something to keep an eye out for, but mostly I'm just watching the surface of the water, looking for any ripples or surface activity, things like that. And I'm just looking at the bank. I'm at the advantage right now where it's low tide, so I can kind of see what's going on when the water is up a little bit. I can get an idea where these fish might want to hang out. I've got a really big mud flat right over here. You can see the mud edge on the water right there, and a bunch of grass and things like that over here. So I'm gonna go try and set off of there. And if that doesn't work, I can go to the outside bend of this little creek and try over there. It looks like there's an opening where fish may have some traffic in and out of those weeds and those reeds and whatnot when the water's up a little bit. So those are the first two spots I'm gonna fish. If not, I'm gonna take a clue from that guy way out there. There's a little heron. He's out in the water fishing. That honestly might be my first spot. So we'll see in a second what I decide to do. Okay, so I'm gonna end up going with plan A, right on that mud bank right off to the right of the video I showed you just a moment ago. When I set my net, I'm gonna go into shore. I'm 20 feet away from shore right now. It's only about 3 feet deep. I'm gonna set my net and drag it directly away from the shore. You'll see that in the background as I get going here. But once I get in about shallow enough, I'm gonna throw my float line in. Got my sinking line right here. It's got a little knot in it, so I'm gonna get that out while I have a chance. Anything you can do to help your next recovery or set go a little smoother, that's what you wanna do. So I'm gonna toss my sinking line in, and now I can take my box and just kind of lean it over the edge so it's away from my rod holders and rudder controls and whatnot, and just let that drag out on its own. So I'm actually much shallower than I thought. I might have to use a paddle to get out of here. Okay, so I'm in about 2 foot of water right now. I'm just gonna let that net drag out. One thing I like to do is just grab the float line and pull that up a little bit and let the sinking line go behind there. And then I keep an eye back here. I just make sure that it's pulling out nice and smooth and I'm not bunching it up anywhere or dragging it along the bottom. That could cause a snag. So I'm just gonna go along at not even a mile an hour and just kind of let this come out. Every now and then it does get snagged on stuff, so you want to keep an eye out for that. And we're just gonna set the net. Right now my goal is just to get it in the water in the general position that I want, and then I can always go back and fine tune it once I get to the end of my 50 foot here. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of the line here. I'm going to separate these two lines so they don't get wrapped up. And you can see my kayak's turning around a little bit on me. That's fine. I'm going to switch you over to this camera. Okay, so now I've got my two lines in my hand. I've got my floating line on top of my sinking line. I'm just going to position my kayak so I'm looking at my net, and this will take me just a minute to maneuver. Bear with me. Okay, so now you can see my net's right there. I'm only in about 3 feet of water right now, and I know the other end of that net is really shallow, so I'm going to try and pull that out. And that doesn't always work so well in reverse, so I'll probably have to use the forward drive to do the most of the heavy lifting here. So now I'm back into 5 foot of water. Now I'm going to turn out and away so I can pull that net further away from shore. Try and find some deeper water. Still got these in my hands. Now I'm in 4 foot, 5 foot, and you can see I'm just dragging that along behind me. Usually I have a trolling motor with me, which helps a ton. That can do the heavy lifting, and I just sit there and mess around with the lines. But it's super shallow through here. We're still only in about 4 foot of water, but as you can see, that's nice and straight. I'm gonna drop my sinking line, let that catch, drop the float line, and now we wait. It is important to keep an eye on your net. Luckily I have a floating net here, so I can keep an eye on these orange buoys at the surface. You just want to make sure you don't get other species caught in there. So you can see these starting to bob over here. You see the ripples coming off of them. That's most likely gizzard shad. However, sometimes you can catch bass, you know, whatever, catfish. So if they really start to go crazy, you know it's a bigger species, you want to pull that really quick so you can get them untangled and out of your net, because you don't want to kill them. As you saw a moment ago, I had some hits pretty much right away in my net, but a lot of times it just sits there and kind of struggles. Maybe the shad aren't on the move too much, so sometimes you can just encourage them to move a little bit. My net's right up here. I'm along the mud flat. I'm just gonna pedal along right towards my net and make some noise so you can bang things in your boat. I usually like to take my bucket and just hit it on the side of my kayak and then just steer towards your net, and you can just kind of drive them along the flat right into your net and just run them straight into it. If you have a paddle, that's a really good thing to do, is just use your paddle to smack the top of the water and scare them into it. You just want to make sure you don't run into your net. Okay, so that seemed somewhat unsuccessful. It's only been in the water for a minute or so, so I'm just going to go ahead and sit on the end of it and wait. I like to look right down my buoy line and keep an eye on them. Although it might have worked, those last couple buoys are bobbing. So we've scared something into it. I saw some activity on the other side of the net, so now I'm gonna go down the mud flat a little bit more. I've got my paddle this time. I'm just gonna drive towards my net and smack the water. And I'm gonna keep an eye on those buoys, see if I scare anything in. And at the last minute, I'm going to turn to get away from my buoys so I don't run my net over. Okay, so I've had some buoys on either end bobbing up and down, so there's a good chance I've got some fish in here. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it so I can show you how it looks. The worst thing you can do is leave your net in way too long, especially if you're on a school of shad or something. It just loads up and you've got way more bait than you need. You don't want to hurt the population like that, so just be smart with your use of your net. Okay, so I've got, again, I'm separating my lead line and my float line. I'm just gonna start pulling them in. This is like the lazy man's way to catch some bait. And we've got a shad already. Okay, so he swam into the net and his gills got stuck, which is exactly what the net's designed to do. Now you can just real gently pull those off and toss them in the cooler for bait. It doesn't get any easier than that. Well, we hope you enjoyed that video, and if you do, please give us a thumbs up on it. We do all kinds of different content on this channel, so subscribe so you don't miss the next thing. Hopefully you're feeling a little more confident setting a gill net off of a kayak once you try it a couple times. I mean, I know I was intimidated the first time I tried it. It's actually easier than setting off of a boat, especially by yourself. So give it a try if your state allows it, and get some good fresh bait, which is the first step in catching some really nice catfish. So subscribe to our channel, like the video please, and we'll see you on the next one. Now it's time for you to giddy up and get on out of here.